Oh yeah, it's
recording. Yeah.
All right. So how does first episode?
Fuck it, we'll do it live.
Fuck it. We're gonna figure this shit out right now. we're gonna figure it out. All right, you're gonna wing the intro. I'll wing the intro, and whichever one goes better, we'll take it. What's going on, guys? Welcome to the We Are Just Making It podcast. I'm your host, Amir Lancaster.
I'm your co-host, Ali Lancaster.
And today we're going to be interviewing one of our good friends, Cory Camp, author of The Forever Athlete, and an outstanding individual when it comes to athlete mindset, wellness, longevity in terms of just like the mental space. Really excited to dive in today. Cory Camp.
Thank you, gentlemen, for having me. First guest. Let's just
let's get that out on the table.
Let's get it out of the way.
This is the first podcast episode that we've got.
I'm honored.
We're honored.
Thank you for allowing us.
Yeah, when Amir texts me, all the plans go out the window. We're here. The bat's
I didn't know I had that kind of power.
Yeah. We're here, bro.
I think I might swing for the president next.
You got my vote, Bubba.
Which one?
All right, so Cory, the way that we kind of want to dissect this podcast is we both want to handle individual tasks. I really want to kind of get to know the identity of who Cory Camp is, what got you to Forever Athlete, and what's gotten you this far in life, and what's going to take you further. And then Ali, I think, is going to be the person that's going to dissect the business side of you, really get to understand where is Cory headed from a business standpoint. I'll let you kind of go on that.
Yeah, so a little bit about me. I'm huge into business as far as books go. I read a ton of books, private equity books, business acquisition books, marketing books, and for the longest time, wealth and how people amass wealth has just interested me. So I think that's a skill set that, can be learned. I don't think people are born financially literate, and I think it's something that some of the wealthiest people aren't born financially literate, but they have the capacity and know wherewithal to understand and study it. And I love dissecting people's journey. I know, again, this podcast is about people's journey, ins and outs, failures, but also what's working for you, So I know we've talked earlier, you have a gym called The League in Cedar Park. I'd love some more information on what that entails, what that looks like.
Yeah, man.
How's it going?
Well, I was about to say, I can tell you first and foremost in full, like showing all my cards, I can tell you a lot of ways to not make money. I've realized in my 20s, I'm really good at spending money, certain ways, ideating, trying to just like really be curious. And I think to answer kind of both your questions here, to Amir's point, like who am I as a person? Like I'm a curious learner. Like that is the hat that I put on first and foremost. I'm really good at ideating and getting things started. I need to work on seeing things through to the finish line is what I've learned these past really 10 years or so.
Yeah.
A little bit of backstory about me. I grew up swimming, and for the longest time, like that was my identity, was Cory Camp, the swimmer. If you had met me probably through about 22 years old, that's what I would lead with. I was like, hey, I'm Cory, I swim, and I do some other things, but like swimming is the majority of my time. And so when swimming ended for me, it kind of put me in this tough spot because I didn't know who I was without this main identity thing or how I viewed myself. And so when I looked at myself in the mirror, I had a job in sales. I was like, I just don't feel like me. I don't look like me. And to the outside world, I also wasn't me. And that was kind of a 2-year stint where I just kind of like stumbled around, very early 20s, very lost, just trying to answer this question of who am I? And that was kind of what I realized the start of Forever Athlete was me starting to answer that question over and over and over again and realizing that it's not actually ever a finite answer. If we look at identity formation, and this will kind of all come full circle in a second here, but when we are younger, we're asking that question, well, who am I? And oftentimes athletes, we find it through our sports. Rugby for you, swimming for me. And eventually what happens is you find the thing that you're good at and you get this like self-worth out of it. You find this value in it and this confidence. And that usually happens somewhere between like 10 to like 15, and then you start to go all in on that thing because you realize like, like I'm
This
really
is it.
good.
I'm not bad at this.
I found my groove,
like-
I'm finding my rhythm.
But if you look at me at like 15, I always joke all the way through the end of my swimming, like formal swimming career, dude, my confidence through the roof in the pool. My confidence like outside of the pool deck, pretty much like non-existent. I was very much like, but if I was around other swimmers, I was goofy, I was me. But outside of that environment, I wasn't. I was kind of like the shell.
Why was that?
It's because I attached my full identity to swimming, so I felt like I could express the full extent of who I was.
Right.
That full expression only came about in environments that were like swimming or 1 degree separation from swimming.
Where you were comfortable.
Yeah, that was where I found my comfort zone, so to speak. So that's like the first stage of identity formation. You go from who am I to you find the thing. So you go all in and you like how you feel. So you just like positive compounding energy. You just keep going deeper and deeper into that. And then there becomes this like jump where maturity actually comes into the picture, and you start to look at, well, the chairs that we're sitting on, there's a couple legs on the ground. They're pretty stable, right? So if we have only one identity, only one of these legs of this chair is on the ground, something happens, I get injured, I retire in my situation, I age out. Swimming doesn't have like a pro league, so to speak, unless you're Michael
Phelps or
like
Lochte,
the names are very few and far between that have a long career in that, and pretty much hot take, every athlete has a like timeline to their career. Even the goats.
You can't even, I mean, the greats.
You retire at 40.
You can't do it forever. And I think naively, as athletes, we think we're invincible until something happens. And then all of a sudden we're like,
oh, I'm human. I'm human.
You might be him, but you are not him.
Yeah.
And so on like a deeper level to all of that, what is happening when we find that thing? We are finding experiences that bring us flow. That's the flow state is like that feeling of being in the zone, as athletes know it. Other people might be familiar of it, where just like time kind of warps. You are completely present here. Nothing else outside of these walls matter. You're just here, you're the present task. And we all have that gravitate towards certain what we would call primary flow activities. And where it can be very dangerous is when you lose access to that primary flow activity, you psychologically can be then locked out from accessing flow in like any other area of your life. That's where these like negative mental health situations start to happen, like depression on the more extreme cases, but just like minor cases of, wow, I really don't feel like me. It's because you're most likely not getting flow on a consistent basis. So Forever Athlete really came about because I started to personally, find ways to get more flow back into my life without the formal swim practice, because I didn't have time anymore for 4 hours of swimming, nor did I like truthfully want to keep swimming that much. And then I started my own podcast like now 5 years ago, and started to talk with retired athletes about their mindset in sport itself. And inevitably the conversation always geared towards, well, what are you doing afterwards?
What's the plan?
And I found almost every athlete could relate of this, like, I'm lost after this.
I think it's such
there's something there.
I think it's such a big identity. Obviously I'm not an athlete on the levels you guys were.
I mean, you pursued football. You wanted to go to college. And for a while, once Ali found that he wasn't going to be playing college football, you had an identity crisis of your own.
I did.
Like you still identified and were like, I could be a running back. Like
to this day, I watch NFL. And I'm like, I could get 5 yards for a TD easily.
I'm acquaintances with Bijan Robinson, and we'll watch NFL plays, and our group chat loves to make jokes of like, if you had $1 million, do you think you could gain 5 yards against an NFL offensive lineman if the D-line and O-line
carries you get?
And Ali,
Joey Bosa, I got
Ali
Bosa
to this day believes
I got him.
He has the capabilities to hold it in the NFL, and I'm like, you don't. I
mean, I would joke with my friends back home. I was like, look, give me 2 years, like strict training. I think I can make it to the league in something. And I'm good buddies with Nate Boyer, who was the oldest NFL rookie at 34. Granted, Nate had like a 10-year Green Beret career prior to
that'll keep
walking on
that'll do something for you
and going to do this stuff, right? But Nate's like, dude, I mean, hey, if I did it at 34,
why not?
28, you still got a few years to make it happen.
And on that note that you previously spoke on, of the whole like domino effect of having identity crisis, which leads to something else in your life that kind of just trickles to a negative aspect. I think what Forever Athlete does provides a crazy good value for essentially stopping that domino effect, because a domino essentially can knock down a bigger domino that's 50% its size, right?
Yeah.
If we replace that domino that's being knocked over with something positive, like a community like Forever Athlete, I think the trajectory of that athletes or former athletes, current athletes, post-athlete, whatever you are, it can change the trajectory of your life. And I think Forever Athlete is one of the most brilliant ideas that probably came out of ATX.
So
I really do.
Appreciate it.
I really do.
Would you say Forever Athlete was something that you created to save yourself versus
100%.
to give community?
Yeah, I mean, so what I noticed I struggled with immediately post college was relating with the people that I found myself surrounded with in my corporate job. So I was working in a call center doing mortgage refinancing in like suburbs in between Baltimore and DC.
God, that sounds exciting, dude.
Yeah,
Oh
Holton,
my
Maryland,
gosh.
man.
Oh my gosh.
I was answering a whole bunch of calls. Thankfully, they were inbound. Not
you
just
go.
like cold call, dial in, but you dealt with some stuff, and it was interesting because I found myself very hard to relate to a majority of my coworkers. But there was a handful of other like ex-athletes, collegiate players, some NFL guys there that were working. And it was funny because the way that this company was set up, you were divided into the sales teams were NFL teams. It was like I was on the 49ers, and that was
nice.
like our team. If you hit a certain sales goal, you got a jersey. And there were certain elements of sport that were still baked in.
Right.
And I was like kind of like sold on. But when I looked around, it was like very few people wanted to work out with me prior to going into the office.
Yeah.
There
Very
wasn't
few
anything
people.
outside of it.
Yeah, and so I kind of like shied away from what I actually wanted to do and tried to fit the mold of what everyone else was doing. And then after 9 months, that kind of like came to a head where I was like, I'm miserable.
Yeah.
I'm getting absolutely plastered Friday and Saturday night, eating large pizzas. I put on 50 pounds in those 9 months. Like I blew up to the heaviest I've ever been in my life, and I was miserable. I went to go run a mile and my knees felt like they were going to explode.
Yeah.
And I was like, how do I go from as a nationally ranked distance swimmer, and now I feel like I can't run a mile? Like, this is embarrassing.
Yeah.
And so I started to get my own stuff in order, but also just started reaching out to other people, trying to be like at the end of the day, our basic human need is we don't want to feel alone.
It's community.
We want to feel seen, heard, and hopefully understood by the people that are around us on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And I wasn't feeling that way from a majority of the people around me, so I wanted to change that environment. And that was kind of where it started. I just started bringing people together. It started virtually because it was pandemic, and then there was this need where people wanted to get together in person.
Was there a catalyst moment that took you from like, man, I really don't want to feel like crap anymore? Was it like you looking in the mirror one day and saying, these love handles have to go? And then also, how did you have that self-conversation with yourself? Because a lot of the times people look in the mirror, they know, man, I'm gaining some weight, but they don't take action, right?
Yeah.
It's like the dog sitting on the nail and he doesn't move till it actually hurts. You know?
Yeah, there was a moment. So to kind of like place the timeline.
Yep.
This was right around like the new year, going in first year out of school. So coming up on like a year of graduation, and I had gotten this email from a family that I used to coach swimming back in the day, and they were like, "Hey, I don't know like what you did with our kids, but they refuse to take swim lessons from anyone else. So this is just like a Hail Mary prayer. Are you still in like the Maryland area? We would love to like, we'll pay literally whatever. Like, we just want you to take swim lessons.
Come now."
They like literally ask about it almost every single day. I was like, I took a step back. I was like, wow, that's really cool that
that you had that kind
I
of
had that
impact.
kind of impact on these kids'
crazy
lives.
cool.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. It didn't make any financial sense. I was living in Baltimore, where they wanted to train at essentially was just outside of DC. So it would be 45 minutes each way, and swim lessons are $20 minutes a piece. So
Oh,
I was
wow.
like,
So
I'm driving 45 minutes, teaching for 40, driving back for 45 minutes. Eventually, though, word got out that I was coaching again, and like all of a sudden I found myself with this like small business on my hands where I was teaching now consecutively 20-minute time slots for 6 hours on a Sunday. And that was coinciding with still like, I was young, so I was hungover most Sundays. I was trying to do all the things and maximize all the time.
Right.
And thankfully, like, I was teaching swim lessons in the pool, and I was one day just there looking in the mirror like, oh my gosh, like, I'm not fit.
I let myself go.
I went this whole time, man, where I was just like, I was a skinny distance swimmer. I hated not the fact that I couldn't swim like that anymore. So I tried to swing the pendulum so far the other way, and just I could fell in love with the weight room.
Yeah.
Started lifting really heavy, but my eating habits didn't change. And so I kept telling myself, I'm bulking. And then there's that one day where I just looked in the mirror. I was like, I'm not fit, dude. I'm fat. Like, it was just a real honest conversation with myself of like,
and that's tough to have.
This
like,
is where we're at.
Being transparent with yourself, it's not easy because as humans, we naturally want to find comfort, and we want to be comfortable in our own skin. So, I mean, you made not the excuse, but the realization that you're like, I'm going to bulk. Yeah. And then to sit there and say like, I'm not bulking. I am doing the opposite of that. We went past bulking. Yeah.
we went past bulking. That's a very, very dirty bulk.
Hibernation. I mean, but
at
that point.
That speaks a lot to kind of the self-awareness. And I feel like that is a lot of who you are today. Is it might have taken you a while to have that self-awareness then, but now you're someone who's like almost hyper aware. Like, you notice the little things so much so to the point where, like you just mentioned, you were showing up to these swim lessons hungover and you were like, I'm gonna go sober.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I think there's levels to self-love. Like, I speak on that a lot. I've heard it a lot. I'm sure you guys have too, where you're like, okay, self-love, I got to show compassion to myself, like, regardless of where I'm at. And it's like, yes. And like, if you're at a point where you don't want to be at, there needs to be a level of like realness with yourself.
Yeah.
And that is actually the highest form of self-love, is like you willing to not take any more shit.
Yeah.
Because you're at a situation where you don't want to be anymore. And you say, okay, I actually love myself more than allowing myself to continue eating the way that I'm eating, or not going to the gym the way that I know I should be going to the gym, or whatever it is. Those are just my examples, because I'm in the health and fitness space still.
Yeah,
I love that.
No, that's fantastic. I know we spoke briefly on before the cast.
The cast.
The cast.
Oh, the podcast.
The podcast.
I was like, we cast for this?
We don't have time to say pod on here. Come on, we're efficient here. But one of the things we kind of spoke on is like the self-voice, the voice you have in your head. And, I came a little prepared. So I read a couple pages from this book. It's called The Feeling Good Handbook by a guy named Burns. And he talked about really briefly, one of the most powerful forces in the universe is a person accepting themselves. Because essentially you're saying, I have flaws and I'm okay with that, and I'll never be perfect. What can you speak to the fact that, as someone who's gone through that journey, who's looked in that mirror, do you have any advice for anyone listening who needs to have that tough conversation?
Yeah, I think it's one, being able to recognize it first and foremost, right, is a challenge. So an activity that I've done and have, when I was doing life coaching, mindset coaching with clients, have them do is this stoplight activity. Okay. So obviously we've all driven and have sat at a stoplight or driven through stoplights before. You have a red light, a green light, and a yellow light is in between. Looking at your self-talk in each of those scenarios, green light being like, this is when I'm at my best, when I'm in flow, ideally, when I'm just in the zone, things are working, like, what is my self-talk like? Taking a second to like journal after this podcast or after a good day is great, because now you're bringing awareness to, oh, this is how I'm actually talking to myself when I'm having a good day. Yeah. And then you want to go on the other end of the extreme. When you're having your worst day in the world, that red light day, what's the self-talk there? Most likely it's probably pretty negative. And then obviously we're human beings. We don't operate totally in extremes. There's the mundane middle from day to day. Sure. What is like the average self-talk looking like? And taking journal, and that's the benefit of journaling so much, is like you're just cultivating awareness. And maybe I always say to people, if writing's not your thing, I do this thing called vernaling, where I voice journal to myself.
Oh, wow.
Because I'll be driving, dude. Like now to your point, I opened this gym, or helped open this gym up in Cedar Park, which is about a 30-minute drive from where I live on the east side. So I got a lot of time in the car. I pull my phone out oftentimes, and I'm like, a thought pops into my head, and I'll just hit voice note record to myself, and I'm like, all right, so I'm driving, I just had this thought on like friendship today, and like this is how I want to, or whatever it may be. And for me, that can be really helpful because sometimes the pen doesn't flow. And but to kind of tie it in a knot there with that activity, like you want to bring a lot of awareness to the yellow light situations, because that's where you're going to find a majority of your situations on a day-to-day basis. Now, just like you're driving, you have a decision to make. When you're driving and you see a yellow light come up, you take inventory. Do you have enough distance? Do you have enough runway? Like, what changes do you need to make? Do you need to hit the gas and like freaking go and make it? And now you've now effectively switched from a yellow light to a green light, or is like the kind of card stacked against you in that moment, and you're gonna find yourself caught at that red light. But even if you're the best part is like feelings are never final; they're just feedback.
Oh, I love that.
So
wait, can you say that one more time?
Put it on a shirt.
Feelings are never final; they're just feedback.
Wow.
So however you're feeling in that moment, if you're in a red light moment, you're not stuck at the red light forever. The light will change.
Life changes.
Going through like this self-awareness journey, doing the inner work, going to therapy, all of these things, like they are what the tools that help you get better at not sitting and wasting your time at the red light for years on end. And that was those were the tools that I wish I had at 22 when swimming ended. I touched the wall for the last time. I was slower than I was my junior year of high school. Fast forward 2 weeks later, I get rejection letter after rejection letter from every single grad school that I applied to. That was my plan A, B, C, and D, and now it's no longer on the, like, it's no longer an option. I just allowed myself to be stuck for like a year, and then I was like, oh, I should start. So that's hopefully a tangible way to like start getting better at that self-talk. And then like the other way that I've heard it described, Michael Gervais, Finding Mastery, great podcast. He's a great sports psychologist, does a lot of work with the Seahawks. This is his analogy. He's like, a lot of us don't have the ability to recognize how like mean we are to ourselves. We have so many thoughts on a day-to-day basis. Inherently, we have this negativity bias. So a way to get out of that is like, if you were to talk to a child or a loved one the same way that you're talking to yourself, how would you react? You'd probably be pretty up in arms. Like, I've met your mother. Shout out to her. She's amazing. I guarantee you, if I said some negative stuff about your mom, I'd have the two of you jumping across this table at me, right?
No, we'll handle that. We'll handle that.
Exactly. But like, here we are sometimes like we have allowed ourselves the permission to talk that poorly about ourselves to ourselves in our head on a day-to-day basis. Why?
Wouldn't you say it's kind of like, wouldn't you say we allow ourselves to talk about ourselves like that? Because it's like almost if we can't say it about ourselves, no one else can. Like I've had moments where I'm like, for lack of better terms, you're a fat piece of shit, you're lazy, you have ADHD. Like, I've ripped myself to shreds. But at the same time, it's like, if I'm able to say that, no one else can say that and have power over it. So it's like, how do you find that balance of being brutally, truthfully honest with yourself, but also finding that like harmony of kindness and compassion about who you are, about where you are.
Here's the thing. Grace without truth is just mean. Or sorry, truth without grace is just mean.
Grace is just mean.
Right? And grace without any truth is just delusional. So you need both to exist to move forward. Right? So there does need to be a level of that talk. Like, if it is 100% factual, you're looking in the mirror and you are 50 pounds overweight, then yes, like there is a truth that you need to get in shape. You need to get it together. And give yourself compassion and grace for being there in that moment and be like, all right, you can't change in the past. It's in the past. So you've recognized the reality of the situation is you need to start changing the trajectory. Now you can't continue to beat yourself up over past mistakes. Next play up. Let's go. Same mentality that when you made a mistake on the rugby field, or I missed a wall and I swam the freaking mile.
Yeah.
That's a 15-minute race.
It's a long
There would be times where I would miss a wall. Like I would literally flip too early. My toes would just like barely tap the wall. And I had no time. I couldn't afford to be like, oh my gosh, you're such an idiot, Cory,
Yeah.
missing that wall. I was just like,
You got it. Next play.
all right, cool. Next stroke.
Right.
We're right here. I think the hardest part post sport is not really recognizing as clearly that there is always a next play in your day-to-day life.
You don't know what's next, right? Our lives are so, when it comes to sports and when it comes to play, we know what's coming next, right? We know the timeout's coming. We know the next snap. We know the next dive, whatever it is.
It's predictable within the confines of a game.
Right. But when it comes to our lives, you don't know what's next. You don't know the next job opportunity you might have. You don't know if you're going to get the chance to kiss that loved one goodbye again. Like there's just so many unknowns. And we just get so hung up on, I should have seized that moment, right? Which is good. It's a great mentality to have. Carpe diem, seize that moment, whatever that might be. But at the same time, it's also like from a financial perspective, you have to have that abundance mindset of like, more will come.
Yeah.
Like it's okay that I didn't get this one because I'm already focused on the next one.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where you have to kind of take a step back. You know, I think as athletes, speed, strength, powers is in our nature. And taking a step back, slowing down is kind of tough. I know on your Forever Athlete merch, you have Forever Athlete merch link in the description.
It's coming soon.
Coming soon.
Oh man, there's stuff.
You have a sweater on there that says "Slow down to speed up."
Yeah,
dude,
and it's so good because I feel like a lot of times, again, as athletes, strength, power, speed, quick decisions, it's a part of your DNA. It's part of who you are. Fast twitch muscles, whatever the case may be. But a lot of the times, it's hard to switch that off, and I think that just resonates so well with so many people that. When you're at that red light, slow down. Like
take that red light.
Take inventory. Yeah. Take that red light.
It's okay. Like,
it's okay.
But you got to clear it up. Like it's okay. The game isn't about never getting caught at a red light.
No,
not staying stuck there.
Exactly.
It's not letting the car break down at the intersection. And
it's about getting the next green light. The next green light, and then and man. So my last question before we kind of dive into the business side of things and kind of like the way that you see your future going is, how have no's shaped you? Obviously, being an author, running businesses, running a personal training business, trying to step into the corporate industry, there's a lot of no's, especially, I mean, even with being in a call center. So what would you say your takeaway is from no's? Do you chase more of them? Have you became numb to no's? Like,
yeah, I mean, I think it's about it's just feedback. And feedback is neutral, so it's up to us to put whatever spin we want on it. Mm-hmm. You know, I think a no is just one step closer to getting to a yes. And that might be delusional. People might, but there's also a time to be like, all right, like, again, take inventory. Am I getting no's because this is like a genuinely bad idea, or am I going down the wrong path?
Right.
Like sometimes a no is good. Yeah. It's a good like, hey, dude, stop, switch directions, change lanes. Yeah. Sometimes it's just like, all right, this person just doesn't get it. No worries. Next one up. So being able to differentiate between the two, I think, has been a big lesson for me, and I'm still learning that. Like being able to discern there's different types of no's.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you're not shooting shots, like,
you miss all the shots you don't take.
Yeah, literally. It's so cliche, but it's
dude, there's so many cliche sayings that I'm just like, you can't help but repeat it, but at the same time, it
just applies so well. You're like, what do I do?
I wrote the Forever Athlete book. It was a co-author project. I got 18 athletes total to talk about their story, their journey from like athlete to what is next. And the whole point of that project was to showcase that there's no one right way to do it. There's not there's sort of a blueprint, but it's not like, oh, well, after athletics is over, you go into real estate. After athletics is over, you go into sales.
Right.
And that's the solution. It's like, no, we're individuals. Guess what? Like, just like there's no one archetype for the ideal athlete. You know, Tiger did it one way, Michael did it another, you know, Serena did it another. And there's so many different ways to quote unquote be the best. So don't get caught up in trying to apply someone else's playbook to your own life and be frustrated about why it's not working.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to grab some water and we'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to the We Are Just Making It podcast. I am your host, Amir. I have my co-host here,
Oli.
And then we are interviewing Cory Camp today, owner and author of Forever Athlete, an amazing dude. If you haven't gotten the opportunity to listen to the first 30 minutes of the podcast, we dove a lot into Cory's background and kind of what got him here to feeling like he's just making it, whether that means he's succeeding or trying. And now this is the portion of the podcast where we really want to focus on the business side of what's making Cory, Forever Athlete, and all his other endeavors tick. So, Cory, let's dive into it.
Heck yeah.
So Cory, quick question, and it kind of encompasses everything. What is making it to you? Now that can be from a financial perspective, that can be from a time perspective. What is making it to you? When you look back, you're 60 years old. What do you see yourself as saying, I did it?
Yeah, I think it's just making an impact on the community around me. Like, I want to be, like, if I were to be gone, I want to be missed. Like, I want it to be felt that I wasn't present in the communities that I lived in anymore. So to me, that's kind of the metric at which I measure every single day now, is like, what am I doing today to make an impact? Whether it's spending time with you guys, whether it's sitting down and helping a newly retired athlete, or sitting down and mentoring a senior or junior in college that's starting to have these like preemptive questions of like, okay, so I know time is kind of ticking, like what's next? It's having those sort of conversations. And I think to me that making it's not a number from a monetary standpoint, as long as, like, obviously I want my basic needs met. I don't want stress, and I don't want my wife and future kids to stress about it either.
Future wife, you mean?
Future wife, yeah. Just to clarify, clarify that one.
He is not on the market, but I just want to contract.
We're under contract.
We're under contract.
That's funny. Well, good to know. That's really good. It sounds like impact is your goal, not a monetary, number. I know a lot of people I've spoken to, they're like $10 million a year or $1 million bucks. And when you break it down, it would be sick.
I'm not saying I wouldn't want that.
No,
Put that out there.
We're not telling the universe right now that I'm not okay with 10 million.
I'm actually I think I'm open.
I think I'm open
to that one.
Well, good to know. That's really good to know. Now, as far as Forever Athlete goes, it's a book, fantastic book. Highly recommend anyone check it out if they're trying to find their way, whether you're an athlete or not. Did that become as successful as you thought it'd be? I mean, obviously, when you write a book, #1 New York Times bestseller is always the goal, right? Yeah. Do you feel like any dismay, or do you feel like a failure if you didn't reach that goal?
No, well, to be clear, it didn't become a number 1 New York Times bestseller. Put that out there. But I mean, let's take a peek under the hood of perception, the power of perception, right? So why I wrote the book was I see a vision where, in a perfect world, this is what Forever Athlete is. I'm going into universities, colleges, athletic departments at the university level, or at the Division 1, 2, and 3 level, and I'm speaking with their athletes, and I'm talking about this idea of like really just starting to plant the seed of what is really building a holistic identity beyond just sports. AKA, what other hobbies and interests do you have? And how do you like pour into those and develop those and continue to cultivate those while you're still a student athlete, so that when you end your athletic career, you have other interests in, like, you have a jump start on that. You've already asked yourself, oh, like, I'm curious about podcasting or music or whatever it may be. And actually, it's like an NIL hack as well. It's like you become a much more sellable player to brands if you have something outside of just your sport to be sold. So in a perfect world, I'm going into colleges and having that talk, right? Well, to put it honestly, like, I don't have a PhD in this stuff, so
you're speaking from experience.
And speaking from experience, but sometimes that's in the like academic world, in the especially college athletics world, NCAA, like it's gate kept a lot. So I mean, I've been told by certain universities, sorry, you're not an alumni here. Like they just wouldn't get it from you. They wouldn't be receptive. And I'm like, okay, that's a no. It's giving me feedback, and not to. okay, I'll circle back to them in 10 years when this thing is like too successful for them to not bring me in.
Absolutely.
But like for right now, I'm wasting my time continuing to bark up that tree. And I found myself though, like getting no after no after no and all these things. I was like, all right, well, what's a way to like increase my credibility? I'll write a book. And so started, after having hundreds of interviews with other athletes, I was like, there's got to be 20 of us at least, or something of that number, that are willing to write about this experience in their words more in depth. So that was how the book came about. That took about a year process of writing it, gathering all these stories. Then it was self-published through Amazon. And so I came back to these schools that originally had said no, or just didn't even like respond to my cold email. I was like, hey, by the way, I wrote this book on this topic of holistic identity, athlete identity formation. Can I come in and talk to your school about it? And started to get like response rate went from like 0.01% to now like 3%. I was like, all right, it's still not great, but at least I'm getting responses. Like I'm getting some feedback. I'm going on the right track. And so then I started doing a little research. I was like, oh, like through a program, if you ever write a book called Publisher Rocket, you can basically clean or just look at the back end of Amazon and search for keywords, categories, and all that. And it will tell you quite literally like how many books do you need to sell in a given day to become a bestseller in that category.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
So
wow.
bet. If they're not taking me seriously just as a published author, like they're gonna
Take me seriously
if I have a best-selling book.
Yeah.
And so I just designed a strategy. It was actually perfect. I did it on my birthday. It was the day that I picked to like go for it.
Yeah.
So I was like, what's the day where people are texting you more than any other day? It's your birthday. So I was like, all right, well, it's not weird. I'm not just sending out mass text. They're actually texting me. And so I found 8 different categories that I found were going to be like the quote unquote easiest to become a #1 bestseller in that day. And I said, okay, April 6th, everyone who texts me, I'm just going to, hey, small favor. I wrote this book recently. I actually discounted it down to 99 cents on Amazon. Could you do me a solid and just like go buy it?
Yeah.
Like that would mean the world to me. I'm trying to become a bestseller in this category. And sure enough, like had enough people that were like, yeah, dude,
sure.
would love to support. Happy to. 99 cents, say less. I had some people that bought like 100 books. I was like, you didn't have to go and do that, bro. But I really appreciate you. And so they ran the numbers up, and then I was able to became a #1 bestseller in 8 different categories on Amazon to clarify for the day, right? So like gaming the system here. It wasn't like for a full week or anything like that. It was just for a single day.
That's great.
But was able to then now change the perception of not just myself in the book.
The accolade.
It was an accolade that I could now go back to these universities, and I started calling back and I said, hey,
Yeah.
now it's actually an 8-time bestseller. You wouldn't believe what's happened since the last time I emailed you.
Right.
The book has become an 8-time bestseller in 8 different categories. Like, isn't that so cool? I would love to talk. I'm so passionate about this. I would love to talk to your athletes about it. And so they started to ask. They started to say yes. Doors started to open.
That's so cool.
I had an opportunity where this still like blows my mind. Biggest opportunity in the Forever Athlete space. The ACC, the Atlantic Coastal Conference, they came to me and they were like, hey, we do this player development academy and we want you to be the keynote speaker. Last year was Jay Billis. This year we want it to be you. And I was like,
What?
That's pretty.
Yo, could you imagine?
Yeah.
I'd be like, who's calling me?
No, this is a prank.
Is this the right number?
Right.
And they were like, and we want to buy a copy of the book for every athlete that is in like this player development academy.
Oh my
for us.
gosh.
And I was like, okay, great, let's do it. So that is just kind of like a story of perception, right? Like how you're perceived changes, unfortunately, off of things that like are not always. Is it real? Yes.
Yeah.
And it's not like that. You're just finding ways to play the game.
But that's the thing is, in today's day and age, perception is everything. Like
Reality.
even what we see on social media and TV and news, it's just skewed perceptions.
Yeah.
And so all you did, it's not like you lied to the public. It's not like you did anything that was immoral. The only thing that you did is you gave yourself opportunity and said, look, I know I deserve to be in this space. How can I get into this space?
Absolutely.
How can I knock on these doors and you guys want to accept it. And like that is how you take a no and you turn it into a yes.
And I think the coolest part about this, Alex Ramosi, I'm sure many of you are familiar with, he writes that there's really only 4 ways to get people to buy your stuff, right? It's cold email, cold outreach, warm outreach, affiliate marketing, and referrals. You just happen to stumble upon 3 of those via cold outreach, cold email, and reaching out to people you know. And you did it so strategically that I think anyone watching should really take notes. He messaged people on his birthday, everyone. The biggest day that people reach out to him.
Right.
They're essentially inbound leads at that point, you guys. But he did that because he didn't give up. He didn't take the no as I should stop. He took the no as let's pivot and persist.
Yeah.
And I think that's such an important thing because a lot of people don't start things because they don't have, I don't know where to start. Just start. Just start.
Yeah.
The road will be clear each step along, right? And I can't speak to that enough because I think we live in a society where people are judged on their failures rather than their wins. And I think you just took that on the chin saying, I'm okay with failure. And again, failure is such an arbitrary term. It could mean a ton of different things, but I think it's really important that you just, again, you pivot and persist. And then you stumbled upon the 3 out of the 4 ways to only get customers because you got creative and you had the social proof to back it up all of a sudden from the reviews. And so if no one gives you your roses, we're giving you your roses.
We're giving you your flowers.
Not that you need it, obviously, but I think that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much more to that opportunity too. It was like the decision maker that was selecting the keynote that year happened to be like one of the few very early on that like she not only responded to my cold email, but we like hopped on a phone call. It didn't work out. She was at Virginia Tech at the time. Like it didn't work out for me to fly in and do anything with them, but we made a point of contact. We connected. She followed me on TikTok and social media. And so when the time came for this discussion of like, okay, we're picking this keynote, I was top of mind because I was posting all the time at the time.
Yeah.
Right.
So it just so happened like cold email led to like continued consistency on social media. I was on top of mind for her. She was like, yeah, you know who would be great for this? Cory Camp would be great. I was like,
that's crazy.
I appreciate that. Like, who would have thought posting TikTok videos like lead to this? But it does. Like there's power in that.
Yeah.
So we've got 1 volume of Forever Athlete. Can people expect for there to be continuous volumes, especially as the mindset of athletes starts to change as they're leaving the game? I feel like beforehand, as athletes left the sport, like they were okay with leaving it. Whereas like now we're stepping into a space where, like you were saying, that is your identity. Like people you're a swimmer first and then you're Cory Camp, right? So do you think that a version 2 will come out where it's a little bit maybe more explosive?
Maybe. I'll never say never to it. I mean, right now, I do want to write a second book. Like, I love writing. I did an ebook on, like, the life after, like, playbook, Forever Athlete playbook. And that was fun to write. But I really want to write a book on community building and connection and building this
you are very
holistic.
Skilled at.
But truthfully, I don't feel, not that I'm not qualified to an extent, I don't think I have the social proof at the level of which I want it to. Like the power that book would have right now is probably like 1/100th of what it will be 10, 15 years from now.
Yeah.
Like I look at like an Airbnb and it's like if Airbnb wrote the story of Airbnb and the theory of Airbnb in year 1, none of us would be hearing about Airbnb.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you've never read the Airbnb storybook, like it came out after they were 10 years into it, it's a fantastic read. There's more substance to it. And that's what I want to do with Forever Athlete is like have an actual community with depth and roots and legs, not just in Austin, but in major cities all over the world. And like there's this bigger platform backing it all up. Like the vision is there. And like once that is being executed at a high level for years, that's when I want a volume 2, whether it be that or another book in some sort. But I want to take a break from the sitting and writing and ideating, and I want actual like action and proof to
Smart.
hold, you know?
Have you ever thought about, so I checked out the playbook that you wrote. Have you ever thought about, from like a monetization standpoint, have you ever thought about giving that away for free? as a lead magnet. I know a lot of people, something called the MIFGI, which is most incredible free gift ever.
Yeah.
It's really beneficial to building your email database, right? You could give it away for free, something that's usually $9.99, which I believe it is on your site, $9.99. Give it away for free for a free email and phone number. And then all of a sudden, if not hundreds, you have thousands of emails to send Forever Athlete when there is a Forever Athlete Volume 2. You can do, pre-sales, etc. Have you ever thought about, well, let me rephrase this. What are you doing right now to get leads and build your community currently that you're not doing?
Yeah, that.
Okay.
Actually, what you're saying
actually,
right
Thanks for coming to the show, guys.
I'm gonna wrap. I'm gonna make that free.
I actually need to go do that right now.
Yeah, so actually, if you're listening to this, little nugget, it will be free after this on the site. No, I think, I mean, what I've been doing, honestly, has just been letting word of mouth, like, let it grow and snowball. And then from there, I'm in the process, honestly, of still figuring it out.
Sure.
Like, for a while, the monetary playbook behind it was all lead magnet for me to life coach.
Yeah.
High ticket paying clients. And quite frankly, I just got to a point where I was like, I'm getting so caught up in just one-to-one. And it was so few and far between at that time where I was like, I don't want to continue living like this.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of stripped away any monetization on the community at the moment. Like, that's not the focus. The focus is literally just growing the community, making it, hey, we got this flag football event coming up. You should come check it out. Hey, we're doing this summer, adult field day in line with the Olympics. Come check it out. That sort of thing. Letting that be the quote unquote lead magnet to a degree.
Yeah.
But I honestly really struggle with the word lead and the business terms around community building, because ultimately it takes away my ability to like view Amir as like Amir and as a human, rather than a potential opportunity within my community. I don't want anyone in the Forever Athlete community to ever feel like that they were an opportunity, a lead.
That's how I feel when it comes to like the real estate space, and that's something that I really struggle with being a real estate agent here in Austin, is that I feel like the second that I start to pitch you that I'm a real estate agent or I sell real estate in Austin, like the genuineness of the relationship that we have,
shifts a little bit.
It shifts because now it's on guard. Is he trying to sell me? When I'm in reality, I'm like, that's just what I do. If you choose to use me or if you choose to be a part of this, amazing.
Yeah.
And that's what's really tough about, like you said, the business terminology is the second that you start viewing your Forever Athlete community as leads and prospects, it's like, okay, am I doing this because it's something that I'm passionate about, or am I doing this because it's something that I want to profit on? But we also have to keep in mind that you have to make a living.
Yeah.
I have to make a living. But that kind of brings me to my next question is like, how does Cory survive on this? Because I know a lot of viewers that are watching this and who are in an entrepreneurial headspace or have entrepreneurial dreams, and you want to take passion into profit. You kind of get scared because you're like, well, I don't want to piss off my friends and family. But at the same time, every great entrepreneur is going to tell you that your friends and family are your biggest, those are the people you should reach out to first. Being a real estate agent, those are the first people you should call and say, hey, just to let you know, I just got my license, would love any referrals, How does Cory make that work for him?
And honestly, I still think I'm figuring that out. Like, I'm in a very like transitional state right now of where I see the vision of where Forever Athlete goes. And I think truthfully the profits comes more from the partnersip with brands and bigger businesses, schools and universities.
Leaving the people out of it altogether.
Leaving the people out of it altogether. Because look, I have to be very hyper aware of the demographic that I'm speaking with. Athletes, they are the most wary of anyone really to the moment they feel like someone's taking advantage of them or being sold to,
they sprint,
shut down, out, they're gone.
100%.
You know what I mean? And I never want someone to feel that when they step into a Forever Athlete thing or see a post or whatever, that they're feeling sold to in that regard. But rather it's like, hey, no, like, look at this brand, look at NOCO. Like, NOCO has come to a bunch of our events. They've handed out thousands of free energy drinks now to different things. They've provided a budget in a way that's allowed me to throw events at a scale that, quite frankly, I wouldn't be able to throw just on my own.
Yeah.
And I think brands like that have the budget, I can work with them to create a win-win where we're leveraging the people in the community, creating an elevated experience, and associating that emotional connection to these brands. And so really it's like an experiential marketing play
100%.
Rather than a how can I monetize the people in front of me.
And people are typically okay with that. Like when you show up to Cory's events, like you are fully aware of the fact that you are going to be bartered off to these brands and you're excited for it. Like you're like, what brands do you have coming? Because I can't wait to get samples, to get a part of it. And it's like you said, it's a win-win.
There's a right and a wrong way to do it. What I suggest every creative does, or someone in this space, a community leader, whatever it may be, take the hour that it takes to sit and outline brand partnership guidelines. Because I view Forever Athlete as its own brand, and I have partnership guidelines. There are certain things that I look for. Like for me, I was sober for about 3 years. Even though I've reintroduced it, breaking news, reintroduced it into my life again, it's in a much healthier relationship than it was. I still believe that an alcohol company is a non-starter for me. So if an alcohol company comes, like 512 Tequila comes to pitch me for an event, I say, hey, sorry, like I believe that people can find fulfillment, fun, and purpose without this. So while you might throw a fat check at me, I refuse to put it into this event.
Right.
Because
That's awesome.
you can get that anywhere else. We're doing something different.
Yeah.
And, but sitting down and actually having clear guidelines, I have like non-starters. This is like a red light. Nope, absolutely not. I'm not even going to entertain the conversation. I'm actually not even going to email the brand back. And then I have like a middle ground where it's like, I'd be open to it. I'll entertain the idea. And then there's the like all-star like slam dunk kind of brands that I want to work with. And I've just looked at different products that I'm naturally already using. If I'm going to the store and I'm actually buying the thing repetitively, then like, they're going to be that slam dunk, no brainer, versus like the middle. I'm like, maybe I haven't heard of the brand, but I'm down to try it. They can send me something. I sample it out, try it for a few weeks. If it fits into my lifestyle, if it fits in with the OG Forever Athlete crew, then I'm okay dispersing it to like the bigger crowd. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In summary, it sounds like you keeping the humanity aspect in Forever Athlete is more important than the monetary aspect.
100%.
Which I respect deeply, because a lot of people sell out, because they need to make a quick buck. But what I don't think people do realize is that when you have such a huge community, they trust what you do, and who you tie your brand to is important. And the fact that you have a red light on like alcohol companies or, things that just aren't in your wheelhouse, they're essentially not in your followers' wheelhouse because they identify with you.
Yeah.
You're right. So I think that's really important. And I think
We got one more. We're about to have to get.
Oh, okay. Well, that's really, what an amazing individual, anyone who's listening. I have tons of questions.
We're still figuring out the timing.
I have tons of questions.
Part of everything.
But
it's all good.
More for a part 2. Cory, do you have anything you want to share, or any passion projects you're working on currently?
What's a nugget that, we'll make sure that your handles are attached and people can kind of reach out to you. What's something that you kind of want to leave people with that relates to We Are Just Making It? Obviously, this is a community of people who are in their 20s, 30s, even 40s, who just feel like they don't know if they are doing the right things in life to ultimately get them to a place of whether it be financial freedom, time freedom, whatever that might be. So what can you leave with people in terms of, hey, this is what I qualify as I'm just making it, and it's okay.
Yeah, I think it's never forgetting that curiosity is the kindling to your passion. So if we're so stuck on finding passion and purpose in our life, and that if we get to the end goal is I'm living a purposeful life, we get so caught up on the end goal that we forget the initial steps. The initial steps always start with curiosity. I look at the lifeline of me as a swimmer. I didn't get into swimming because at 4 years old, when I nearly drowned, I was suddenly like purposeful and passionate about swimming. Like, it was a necessary life skill that my mom looked at my dad and said, "Hey, your son almost drowned. Like, he's going into lessons next week." And I said, "I was 4. I had no choice. I was there." And then that drove continued curiosity. And then in like 6th, 7th grade, I found out that I was relatively good at this sport. And that's when I would say I started to become passionate about it, because I was seeing some progress towards a goal of then, the reality of wanting to be a Division I scholarship swimmer was starting to become real. It was no longer a dream. And that was only a result because I kept staying curious. Curiosity gets you through the tough times, the slugs, the plateaus. I would go years without best times in high school. And like, that's okay. That's like part of the sport. You know that you're working towards something. So when you're looking to make it, that end goal in mind, don't forget about the curiosity. Let that curiosity be this like continually added kindling to like your daily flame, this daily passion that you're bringing every single time that you step up to a microphone, your alarm goes off. Like, it doesn't matter what you do on a day-to-day basis. Just do it with some sort of curiosity and take some ownership and pride of it. Like,
That's awesome.
Be excited with what you're doing, because it's worth being excited for.
Yeah.
Well, guys, that concludes the first episode of We Are Just Making It.
I got one question.
Oh.
Not the end.
Yeah.
So I want to add this at the no, it's not bad. It's not bad.
Why did you just completely step on my neck?
I have a question. So I want to ask this to every guest we have on, and I think it'll be really insightful, more of an actionable item. What's one book that you really love that got you to where you are, that made Cory Cory? And what's one quote that got you to where you are that made Cory Cory?
Shoo. That's a good one. A little bit different. Inquire Within by NQ. He's a poet, spoken word poet. A lot of really just cool, like, and he's great at writing these short, elegant pieces that like leave you questioning your whole existence. And so that was really like a huge catalyst for me to just spark my curiosity to start reading more and like finding different books from there. So I'd say if I had to narrow it down, that. And then as far as quote that I live by, like, as cliche as it sounds, like, just progress is made 1% at a time. Like, don't worry about making these chunk plays every single day. Like, bite off what you can chew and like actually chew it. Make sure you digest it.
Yeah.
And then take that next bite and go from there.
That's fantastic. Now, the outro, sir.
Now, that concludes the first episode of We Are Just Making It. I'm your host, Amir Lancaster, with my
co-host, Ali Lancaster.
And this is Cory Camp. If you guys have any further needs, if you know anyone that is struggling in an athlete mind space and was an athlete, is an athlete, Cory Camp is your guy. If you live in Austin, Texas, he's doing tons of activations, tons of community events. Show up to one. You're going to meet amazing people. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Break.